Dan, real pleasure to finally be able to meet you digitally, virtually. Would you just like to tell everybody who you are, what you do, and we can get into talking about the incredible work that organisations are currently now doing for neurodivergent employees, and I guess how we've moved on significantly from where we were only a year or 2 years ago. So Dan, please intro yourself.
Thanks, Theo, and I'd say I'm so excited to be speaking with you today. I've been kind of following you for quite some time, and you're doing amazing stuff, so keep up all that great work. And also looking around at the audience and my co-presenters, I'm really honoured to be in this group of people. So I'm the founder and CEO of a new charity called Neurodiversity in Business. We launched in Parliament in March of 2022, and our whole vision here is that we need to be changing society in terms of its understanding and acceptance of neurodiversity by showing that corporates can actually lead on this topic.
Incredible, and good work as well. And you're absolutely right. That's what I saw, that organisations have the ability to move really quickly on this subject, and it seems that they are. It seems that organisations are starting to take note, stand up, and be accounted. And take action. So what are you seeing then, and what are you seeing that's perhaps different to what you were seeing 12, 24 months ago? What are organisations doing? How are they starting to be more inclusive for neurodivergent employees?
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think we've definitely seen a big sea change over the last couple of years. I don't necessarily think it's to do with COVID and lockdowns, etc. But I do think that finally organisations are realising that for too long, they've left neurodiversity in the too hard to deal with bucket. And we've made great strides, or good strides, depending on who you talk to, on sexuality and gender balance, ethnicity. We're starting to focus on socioeconomic as a society. But neurodiversity has always been that topic, I think, that people have struggled to really make meaningful progress. So I'm delighted to see it being talked about at the top table in corporates, but also within the political sphere. I think we're also seeing politicians stand up and say, actually, if we are going to do this whole levelling up around the UK, it shouldn't just be around particular parts of the UK, it should also be around disenfranchised and marginalised parts of our society. So in terms of answering your question, Theo, I think that what we're seeing these days is actually more meaningful and strategic imperative around setting up neurodiversity at work programs, which are holistic in a sense. So previously, I think we've all been guilty of falling into the trap of having a public pronouncement to say we're going to hire 10 autistic people in the technology sphere. But people like yourself and other great people in our community have been pushing back on that for years to say, actually, let's think slowly and methodically, who's not in the room here? So what I mean by that, and my good friend Atif Chowdhury says this a lot better than I do, but what we're talking about here is if you just focus on this stereotypical white male, high technology, autistic kind of focus area, you're missing out on all of the other aspects. So you're missing out on the fact that we need to be considering those people who are not in the room because they've been marginalised by not having early diagnosis, not having support through school, not having access to kind of a top-rate education, which then leads them into a well-placed job. So what I'm really pleased about is that increasingly now corps are realising that not just they have a economic imperative to do this, but they also have a societal and a moral imperative to consider the kind of the holistic nature of neurodiversity. And as you know better than most people, Theo, there's such a great intersectionality, isn't there, around sexuality and ethnicity that probably in the other areas of D&I, we don't see that as pronounced. But in neurodiversity, we need to be extremely cognizant of that and respectful of the fact that we aren't just talking about a neurodiverse condition, we're also talking about how do those other areas of intersectionality interplay with neurodiversity. And the obvious example to kind of talk about there is that when you're talking or dealing with neurodiversity at work programs, you also need to be thinking about How does sexuality play into this? How does ethnicity play into this? So how do we reach those marginalised parts of society? For example, black boys on ADHD spectrum, not necessarily being diagnosed early as potentially a white girl in an affluent area might be, and then how does that interplay through the education system and into employment? So we just need to be extra cognizant of this and being really proactive. And I'm pleased that we are actually coming together around that these days.
Brilliant. And so why do you think it's made a shift then from this being in the too difficult to deal with box to actually this is something that we need to deal with and we need to focus on, rather than just letting it sit over there and think we'll do it next year, we'll do it the year after? Has there been an interplay there with COVID, or do you think it literally just has been the right time for this movement?
Well, I think we should highlight the fact that we're standing on the shoulders of giants here. So there's been, and I won't name them, but they know who they are. There are people who've been in this field for 10, 20 years who have been banging on the door for a long time and actually doing all of that foundational work. I don't associate it too much with COVID, but COVID did help in the sense that age-old argument that you cannot be productive working at home, or you cannot make reasonable adjustments for neurodivergent employees because they're too costly or time-consuming, that was just blown apart, wasn't it, Theo? I think we all remember Boris's announcement. I think it was kind of a Monday it came in, and we all shifted to working from home. And then actually businesses thought, gosh, if I'm doing this for the 100% of my workforce, the neurodivergent employees were then saying, quite rightly and highlighting, we've been asking for these things for years, and you told us that it wouldn't be possible. Now we know it's possible. So I do feel like it did open the floodgates to some extent. But to answer your question more purposefully, I think that it is the result of a significant number of people shouting, raising their voices for many years, and we're now in that fortunate position that businesses woke up that this is something 15 to 20% of the workforce are associating with, and that's such a massive number. The final thing I'd say, Theo, is that what's helped us over the last couple of years is that we're really in a big war for talent now. So the big corporates are, they're recruiting people with a 10, 20, 30% pay rise just to jump ship and to join their organisation. But they've also then thought, if we're going to be paying a 30% increment to bring people into the organisation, why are we not just paying either given that salary increase internally, or more meaningfully, actually investing in our people through better workplaces, through more inclusive working environments? So there has been a shift now that people are so important within businesses that we need to invest in them.
Brilliant. And how is what the government is doing and what you're seeing, I guess, across whether it's education, whether it's in health, well-being, I guess, is interlinked. How is the work that you're doing supporting the government, talk to organisations and support organisations to make those meaningful changes to support neurodivergent talent? Because there's been things in place previously, but for whatever reason, access to work or whatever it may not be, organisations have not tapped into them. What are you seeing now? Where are the links that maybe will be the catalyst for greater inclusivity within organisations from a neurodiversity perspective?
Well, I would humbly defer to the intellectual powerhouses on the co-panel and presenters here today, and particularly the people who are trained in occupational psychology and do this for full time. So those would be your experts rather than I. I guess from my experience from neurodiversity business perspective and interfacing with different parts of business, I think there's an increasing recognition that, for example, the DWP Access to Work scheme, conceptually, it's a good idea. It's funded. I think there's meaningful outcomes in terms of improvements. But probably what's happening is that, one, it's not terribly well understood. It's not high visibility, and I think the potential there is going untapped. So I think there's a recognition, and I was speaking with Chloe Smith, the Minister for Disabled People recently, and she's got some really exciting things which are coming out as part of the latest government spending review around spending more time and attention there. And as we all know, that disability pay gap, although I don't classify exclusively neurodiversity in disability group, that pay gap is just astonishing, isn't it, Theo? And I think that we might be in a world one day where actually that is uniformly publicised. And as the great progression that we've seen around reducing the gender pay gap, which still is going too slow and it's not making enough progress, I would love to see that being part of the measurable, quantified data sets which corporates release.
Great. So on that basis then, if we're still waiting to really get like the meaningful help and support that organisations require to make the transformational change we all want to be more neuro-inclusive, what are you seeing that organisations are doing currently, on their own effectively? How are they ensuring that, what are the little nuggets of information that you can share with us that you've seen that kind of delight you and excite you about the future for neurodiverse talent?
Really great question, Theo. Thank you. So I would say that the changes I've seen over the last couple of years are probably threefold. So number one, I've seen an increasing focus on the awareness aspect leading to acceptance. So awareness programs can be criticised in our community in terms of, okay, it's just one event, it's not a rolling program, it's just awareness and it doesn't lead to anywhere. But actually, I'm kind of more positive on that. I'm an optimist naturally, Theo, actually. So I think that they are having a really great impact because of the fact that self-disclosure rates are increasing. And we get to the point where particularly some of the younger generation coming into employment now are actually putting their hands up and saying, look, I'm not happy with this input form on your joiner, my onboarding process that you're saying, am I disabled, within disability, sub-box, neurodiversity, etc. That's a very old-fashioned way of thinking. What I'm seeing now is that particularly the younger people coming into the workforce are actually proactively saying, look, it's not about a disability or a neurodiverse condition. What this is about is, how can you as an organisation get the best out of me as an employee? How can I be the most productive? And I'll draw on the great work that that Dr. Nancy Doyle has done around universal design. And I think what she was saying there as well is, get it right for the neurodivergent employees and potential employees, and you get it right for the whole of your firm. So I think we're at the vanguard of this, and this really excites me that actually we are on a position where organisations are now saying, this isn't about reasonable adjustments, etc. This is about everyone is different. Everyone, I work in a different way from you that you do, Theo. We need to have that meaningful discussion to say, right, what are the things that will enable you to be the most productive employee and stay the longest and have that kind of positive morale?
Great. And the way I see that, Dan, is it's like a consumer process, right? If we're trying to get somebody to go from one end to the other and to buy something, we're hyper-focused on every stage of that process to understand why they didn't go on to buy that product. Now, it might be fine they decided to buy a different product, or it didn't meet their needs, but these are the things that we're doing right across that to understand why they dropped off and how we can keep them through that process to ultimately buy the product, for example. We just don't do it as well when we think about the recruitment process. And I think that is exactly what you're talking about there. It's at what points are we asking those individuals, how can we give you a better experience? How can we support you? How can we ensure that you can access information in the right way? And if you could do that all the way through, then if people decide to opt out, it's on their terms, right. And we know that we're not going to hire the wrong person, put somebody into the wrong job, that they can go off in some meaningful way with a good candidate experience or an employee experience and move on to the next step, whatever that may be. And I believe that is a key critical area that we need to see significant transformation in, but it's getting better and we're starting to open our eyes to it. So that's lovely, Dan. And so finally, we're just wrapping up. What would you love to see now in the coming 12 months? What would you like to see happen? What's your focus? What are you going to do to try and support organisations to achieve what's needed?
Yeah, thanks, Theo. So we've been overwhelmed with organisations who wanted to join Neurodiversity in Business since we launched in Parliament. We're kind of about 100 organisations. Again, I'm an optimist. I think if we're going to make the meaningful change that we want to see, we have to have universal coverage of neurodiversity in business. So my challenge today is for the people who are working for organisations who have not yet joined, is that all of the FTSE 100, 250, 350, that's the obvious thing to say. But actually, as we know, the meaningful, the beating heart of the UK economy is not those big global organisations, is it? It's the small and medium-sized enterprises. So I want to have a real keen focus on that and making sure that we deliver this for not just a particular group of employees, but also across the whole spectrum of neurodiversity.
Brilliant, and that is a real good focus, and I agree with you. There's a huge proportion of organisations that don't fit into that bigger category, and they have a wonderful opportunity to be transformative in this space. So thanks very much, Dan. Really appreciate you joining us today, and best of luck.
Thank you, Theo. Thank you, guys.